Students often have low conceptual knowledge about evolution and hold intuitive conceptions of how species change. For example, students often explain evolutionary changes goal-directedly and say, for example, the elephant mutated and developed a longer trunk in order to reach higher food sources. These intuitive conceptions are pervasive and persistent because they are based on cognitive biases fundamental to human cognition. These cognitive biases are problematic in the context of evolution, while simultaneously being helpful in other contexts, such as the context of everyday life, where goal-directed thinking is appropriate. Here, saying the woman went into the kitchen in order to get a glass of water would be appropriate. So, how can we help students to regulate their conceptions context-dependently? For example, using goal-directed conceptions to explain human actions in the context of everyday life, but not to explain the development of mutations in the context of evolution. As potential approaches to enable students to become metacognitively aware of their intuitive conceptions and self-regulate these in the context of evolution, we investigated the effectiveness of two instructional approaches that are based on metacognition and self-regulated learning: self-assessment of one's intuitive and scientific conceptions, and instruction on conditional metaconceptual knowledge about why and in which context specific conceptions are appropriate or not. To investigate the effectiveness of these instructional approaches, we conducted an experimental intervention study with 730 secondary education school students. We randomly assigned students to 5 different groups, and we systematically varied the instructional approaches between the groups. Students who were not in the intervention groups received instruction on subject-specific knowledge about evolution, and their intuitive conceptions were not addressed. Group 5 was used as an additional control group that received no intervention. In the pre, post, and follow-up test, we measured students' conceptual knowledge about evolution, reported thought processes when explaining evolution, ability to identify inappropriate phrasing based on cognitive biases, and self-reported general metaconceptual awareness and regulation. The groups that received one or both interventions had higher conceptual knowledge than groups whose intuitive conceptions were not addressed and instead received instruction on subject-specific knowledge. To be more specific, the self-assessment resulted in higher use of scientific conceptions compared to the control groups, while the instruction on conditional metaconceptual knowledge additionally resulted in lower use of intuitive conceptions based on cognitive biases, more reported thought processes relating to inhibition of cognitive biases in the context of evolution, and a better ability to identify inappropriate phrasing based on cognitive biases. The results provide evidence that students can be taught to become aware of the differences between intuitive and scientific conceptions and to regulate the use of their intuitive conceptions in a scientific context. Thus, we recommend implementing these instructional approaches in science instruction. For more information on the study and further implications, please have a look at our paper, Influence of Self-Assessment and Conditional Metaconceptual Knowledge on Student Self-Regulation of Intuitive and Scientific Conceptions of Evolution.